Sir, stand up right now. You don't match this child. I need ID now.
Officer, am I being detained or are you harassing a black man for reading a book?
Turn around. You're refusing to comply. Hands behind your back.
This is an unlawful arrest.
A tranquil, rainy Tuesday afternoon inside the historic Boston Public Library in Copley Square transformed into a $2.5 million legal catastrophe for the city of Boston when a patrol officer made a presumption that would dismantle his life. The entire interaction was captured in high-definition audio and video on his department-issued body camera, recording every bias, every illegal command, and every moment of arrogance. What the officer did not realize was that the 65-year-old black man he was harassing was not merely a patron. He was a federal judge who had spent 30 years on the bench interpreting the very laws the officer was trampling. By the moment the handcuffs clicked, the timeline for the officer's termination had already begun. Before we delve deeper into this case, where are you tuning in from? If you believe in accountability and the rule of law, please make sure you are subscribed. It supports the channel, and I appreciate you being here. The day had begun with the quiet rhythm of rain against the window pane. Judge Jeremiah Blackwood, a man of imposing intellect and gentle demeanor, was seated in the children's section of the Boston Public Library with his 6-year-old granddaughter, Maya. Maya was wearing a bright yellow raincoat and was engrossed in a picture book about space exploration. Jeremiah sat beside her, his long legs tucked under the small table, whispering the names of planets as she pointed to them. Jeremiah was 65. He had been a federal prosecutor for 10 years before being appointed to the federal bench, where he had served with distinction for 2 decades. He was a legal scholar, a mentor, and a pillar of the Boston legal community. However, on this Tuesday, he was not wearing his black robes. He was dressed in a gray hooded sweatshirt, faded denim jeans, and a pair of worn sneakers. To the casual observer or the biased one, he was simply an older black man sitting in a library. Officer Sean O'Malley was on foot patrol in Copley Square. He decided to do a walkthrough of the library to get out of the rain. Later, in his official report, he would claim he was performing a community safety check. The footage would reveal a predatory hunt. O'Malley was 29 years old, a 5-year veteran of the force who had already accumulated 14 internal affairs complaints regarding aggressive conduct and bias-based policing. None had stuck due to a lack of video evidence and a strong union defense. He walked with a swagger that suggested he owned the pavement beneath his boots. O'Malley entered the library, the moisture dripping from his uniform. His body camera was active, the green light blinking silently on his chest. He nodded curtly to the security guard and made his way toward the children's wing. His eyes swept the room, ignoring the white teenagers being loud near the computers, ignoring the man sleeping in the corner. His gaze locked onto Jeremiah and Maya. Jeremiah saw the officer enter. His years on the bench had given him an uncanny ability to read body language. He saw the shift in O'Malley's stance, the way his hand drifted to rest on his duty belt, the narrowing of the eyes. Jeremiah didn't move. He didn't flinch. He turned a page in Maya's book. O'Malley approached the table. He did not offer a greeting. He did not smile at the child. He stood over them, casting a shadow across the book about Mars. "What are you doing here?" O'Malley asked. His voice was not inquisitive, it was accusatory. Jeremiah looked up slowly, removing his reading glasses. He kept his face entirely neutral. "I am reading to my granddaughter, officer. Is there a problem?" O'Malley looked at Maya, then back at Jeremiah. Maya was mixed race. Her mother, Jeremiah's daughter, was black. Her father was white. Maya had pale skin and light brown curls. O'Malley's eyes darted between the dark-skinned man in the hoodie and the light-skinned child. The bias in his mind began to write a narrative that reality did not support. "That's your granddaughter?" O'Malley asked, skepticism dripping from every syllable. "She is," Jeremiah replied calmly. "Where are her parents?" Jeremiah knew the law. He knew Terry v. Ohio. He knew Hebel. He knew that a consensual encounter became a detention the moment a reasonable person felt they were not free to leave. He also knew that answering questions was voluntary unless there was reasonable, articulable suspicion of a crime. Her mother is currently presenting a lecture at the university down the street. I am watching her for the afternoon. Several patrons looked up. A librarian, a woman named Sarah, who recognized the judge from his weekly visits, started to walk over, looking concerned. "You got some ID on you?" O'Malley demanded. This was the pivot point. Jeremiah knew that Massachusetts is not a stop-and-identify state in the traditional sense, and even if it were, the officer needed reasonable suspicion of a crime to demand identification. Sitting in a library was not a crime. "Officer, am I being detained or am I free to go?" Jeremiah asked, his voice a deep baritone that carried across the quiet room. O'Malley bristled. He hated being questioned. "I am asking you for ID. Don't make this difficult." "I am not making it difficult. I am exercising my constitutional rights. Unless you can articulate a reasonable suspicion that I have committed, am committing, or am about to commit a crime, I am not required to identify myself to you." "I'm conducting an investigation," O'Malley countered, stepping closer, invading Jeremiah's personal space. "An investigation into what?" Jeremiah asked. "Reading while black." "Watch your mouth," O'Malley snapped. "We have had reports of loitering and potential issues in this area." "I am a taxpayer. This is a public library. Reading a book is not loitering. It is the intended purpose of this building." Sarah, the librarian, reached the table. "Is there a problem here, officer? This gentleman comes here every week." O'Malley turned on her, pointing a finger. "Ma'am, step back. This is police business. Do not interfere, or I will cite you for obstruction." Sarah stepped back pale, but she pulled out her cell phone and began to record. She wasn't the only one. 3 other patrons had their phones out. O'Malley turned back to Jeremiah. "You're acting very nervous for a guy who's just reading." "I am not nervous, officer. I am annoyed. You are interrupting my time with my granddaughter based on nothing but your own prejudice." Maya looked up, her eyes filling with tears. "Grandpa." "It's okay, Maya," Jeremiah said, his voice softening instantly. "Just stay in your seat." O'Malley looked at the girl. "Little girl, do you know this man?" "Officer." Jeremiah stood up now, placing his body between O'Malley and Maya. "You will not interrogate a 6-year-old child without a parent or guardian present. You are crossing a line. I need to verify she's safe. You don't look like her grandfather." There it was, the quiet part said out loud. "And what does her grandfather look like, officer?" Jeremiah asked, his voice like ice. "Does he look like you? Is that the standard for probable cause in Boston now?" "I'm done asking," O'Malley said, reaching for his handcuffs. "Provide ID and prove you have custody of this child, or I am taking you in." "On what grounds, be specific?" "Disorderly conduct, obstruction, and suspicion of kidnapping." The word hung in the air. Kidnapping. "You are making a mistake of monumental proportions," Jeremiah said. "I am going to provide you with my identification not because you have a legal right to it, but because I do not want you to traumatize this child any further. However, I am doing so under extreme duress." Jeremiah reached for his wallet. "Stop!" O'Malley yelled, hand dropping to his gun. "Hands where I can see them." "I am reaching for the ID you just demanded," Jeremiah said slowly, holding his hands out. "Turn around," O'Malley barked. "You're under arrest." "For reaching for my wallet? For failing to comply? Turn around, hands behind your back." Jeremiah sighed. He looked at Maya. "Maya, listen to me. I need you to be brave. Sarah is going to sit with you. I will be right back." Jeremiah turned around. He felt the cold steel of the handcuffs click onto his wrists. He felt the officer yank his arms up painfully high, a technique used to inflict pain and assert dominance. "I assume your body camera is recording Officer O'Malley?" Jeremiah asked. "Yeah, it's recording you going to jail." Sergeant Maria Gonzalez burst through the double doors of the reading room. Sarah, the librarian, had called 911 the moment O'Malley threatened her. Gonzalez saw the scene, a young officer manhandling an older black man while a child screamed. "O'Malley status," Gonzalez shouted, closing the distance. "Subject is uncooperative, Sarge. Refused ID, acting suspicious with a minor. I'm taking him in for obstruction and checking the welfare of the child." Gonzalez looked at Jeremiah. She paused. She had been in court 2 weeks ago, testifying on a drug case. She recognized the face even without the robe. She recognized the dignity. "Sir," Gonzalez said, stepping between O'Malley and Jeremiah. "I am Sergeant Gonzalez. Can you tell me your name?" I am Judge Jeremiah Blackwood, Senior District Judge for the Federal District of Massachusetts, Jeremiah said calmly. And your officer has just arrested me for reading to my granddaughter. The color drained from O'Malley's face so fast it looked like he might faint. He looked at the handcuffs. He looked at the sergeant. Judge, O'Malley whispered. Get those cuffs off him, now! Gonzalez screamed, her voice cracking with the intensity of the order. O'Malley fumbled for his keys. His hands were shaking. He unlocked the cuffs. Jeremiah rubbed his wrists, looking at the red marks left on his skin. Judge Blackwood, Gonzalez said. I am. I cannot apologize enough. There has been a terrible misunderstanding. This was not a misunderstanding, Sergeant, Jeremiah said, his voice filling the room. This was a calculated deprivation of civil rights based on racial profiling. Your officer saw a black man with a white child and decided a crime was occurring. He fabricated reasonable suspicion. He threatened a librarian. He detained me illegally, and he assaulted me under the color of law. O'Malley stood silent, staring at the floor. I want his badge number. I want the incident report number. And I want that body camera footage preserved immediately, Jeremiah commanded. I am taking my granddaughter home. My attorney will be in touch with the city solicitor by close of business. Jeremiah walked over to Maya, picked her up, and held her close. She buried her face in his shoulder. He collected their books, thanked Sarah the librarian, and walked out of the library with his head held high. O'Malley watched him go, knowing his life had just changed forever. Jeremiah drove home in silence, his mind racing. When he arrived, his daughter Maya's mother was waiting. She saw Maya's tear-stained face and the marks on Jeremiah's wrists. When he told her the story, her grief turned to fury. But Jeremiah was already in lawyer mode. He called his lifelong friend and attorney, Alan Dershowitz, no relation to the famous one, just a brilliant civil rights litigator named Alan, and gave him the instructions. File it, Alan. Section 1983, Federal Court. I want everything. The lawsuit was filed 3 days later. Blackwood versus City of Boston and Officer Sean O'Malley. The complaint alleged violations of the Fourth Amendment, unreasonable seizure, the 14th Amendment, equal protection, false arrest, assault, battery, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The damages sought were $5 million. The City of Boston's legal department went into crisis mode. They pulled O'Malley's file. It was a disaster. According to the Bureau of Justice statistics, black residents are stopped by police at rates disproportionate to their population, but O'Malley's stats were egregious. In a precinct that was 70% white, 85% of O'Malley's stops were of black or Hispanic men. He had a pattern. The body camera footage was reviewed by the police commissioner and the mayor. It was indefensible. The video showed Jeremiah being polite, calm, and legally accurate, while O'Malley was aggressive, rude, and legally incompetent. The contrast was stark. The city tried to settle quickly. They offered $250,000. Jeremiah rejected it. They offered $500,000. Jeremiah rejected it. This is not about money, Jeremiah told the press in a brief statement. This is about reform. I want admission of wrongdoing, and I want policy changes. Discovery began. Jeremiah's legal team deposed O'Malley. It was a massacre. Under oath, O'Malley admitted he had no specific report of a crime in the library. He admitted he assumed Jeremiah didn't belong there. He admitted he didn't know the legal standard for a Terry stop. So, Officer O'Malley, Alan asked during the deposition, is it your testimony that a black man reading a book is inherently suspicious? No, O'Malley mumbled. Then why did you stop him? I just had a feeling. A feeling based on what, his race? No. His clothes? Maybe. So a black man in a hoodie is suspicious to you? O'Malley had no answer. The trial was scheduled, but the city knew they would be destroyed in court. A jury watching that video would give Jeremiah whatever he asked for. The mayor intervened. He authorized a settlement of $2.5 million. But Jeremiah had conditions. Termination Officer O'Malley must be fired and his post-certification revoked so he could never work as a cop in Massachusetts again. Training. The entire department must undergo 40 hours of mandatory training on implicit bias and Fourth Amendment search and seizure laws taught by civil rights attorneys, not other cops. Transparency. The body camera footage must be released to the public unedited. The city council met to vote on the settlement. The room was packed. Councilwoman Elena Rodriguez spoke passionately. "We are paying $2.5 million because we refused to discipline an officer with 14 prior complaints. How many other lawsuits are waiting in the files of bad officers we refuse to fire? This is not just a settlement, it is a penalty for our own negligence." The council voted unanimously to approve the settlement. Sean O'Malley was fired the next day. The police union declined to fight for his job. The video was too damaging and the political pressure was too high. He lost his pension. He lost his career. The video was released. It went viral globally. Millions watched the calm dignity of Judge Blackwood against the fragile ego of Officer O'Malley. It became a teaching tool in law schools and police academies. Jeremiah took the $2.5 million. He paid his legal fees and then he did something extraordinary. He established the Maya Blackwood Legal Defense Fund. The fund was dedicated to providing high-quality legal representation for indigent defendants who had been victims of racial profiling and false arrest. He turned the money from his own oppression into a weapon against the system that allowed it. Jeremiah returned to the bench, but he was changed. He was even more scrupulous about police testimony. He scrutinized every search warrant, every probable cause affidavit. He knew firsthand how easily an officer could lie, how easily a feeling could turn into handcuffs. The library incident faded from the news cycle as all things do, but the impact remained. Officer O'Malley moved to a different state working in construction, forever the guy from that video. Maya grew up understanding that her grandfather was a hero not because he was a judge, but because he stood up for himself when it mattered most. One evening, years later, Jeremiah was sitting in his study. He looked at the settlement check stub he had framed on the wall, not as a trophy of wealth, but as a reminder of the cost of justice. He thought about the thousands of men who looked like him but didn't have the title judge to save them. He thought about the ones who plead guilty just to go home. He thought about the ones who resisted and ended up dead. He realized that his victory was an exception, a rare alignment of status, evidence, and knowledge, and that realization fueled his work every single day until he retired. So what is the valuable lesson we must take away from this story? The lesson is the shield of knowledge and the power of composure. Judge Blackwood survived and triumphed because he possessed two things. Officer O'Malley did not a deep understanding of the law and absolute emotional control. In a situation designed to provoke him, designed to make him angry, so the officer could justify violence, Jeremiah remained the calmest person in the room. He used the officer's own ignorance against him. But more importantly, this story teaches us that status does not shield you from bias, but documentation exposes it. The judge was treated like a criminal until his status was revealed, which proves that bias looks at the surface, not the soul. However, the body camera, the objective eye, was the ultimate arbiter of truth. In your own life, know your rights, study them, understand them. And when you are faced with injustice, do not fight with your hands. Fight with the record. Document everything, because in the end, the truth, when captured and preserved, is the only weapon that tyranny cannot defeat.